We will talk about this redistribution of power and the consequences of it, because this is really the point of your book. But I think we have to go back to the very beginning and distinguish between Sunni and Shia Islam. This goes back to the origins of Islam, to the death of the Prophet, the succession, and who should rule or lead the community after the Prophet's death. It was at that point, was it not, that the Sunni and Shia divergence occurred, and these differences about what was legitimate authority began to shape these two different communities.
Yes, the succession to the Prophet is the contention over which these two sects part ways. Although the actual parting of ways doesn't happen at that moment, it happens later on when civil wars and all kinds of internal dissent grip the young Muslim community, and some begin to think that maybe the way that the successor of the Prophet was chosen at the beginning was a mistake. And that's the point at which, with that kind of Monday morning quarterbacking, if you would, that they begin to separate. But when the Prophet died, his successors was chosen by his community from among his companions. And one who was particularly close to him was the elder of the community, was chosen with the name of Abu Bakr, who was very well known in the Sunni world. Later on, Shiites believed that God had not sent religion for it to be guided by anybody that the community chooses. That God had sent religion along with the Prophet, and therefore logically after the Prophet the God would have left a living guide for the community. And that living guide was the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law Ali, who is buried in the shrine of Najaf in Iraq. And the Shias came in time to believe that Ali should have been rightfully the heir to the Prophet's both religious and political authority, and that whatever charisma the Prophet had would have been transferred to Ali, and then because Ali was married to the Prophet's only progeny, his daughter, then through him via line of blood to the descendants of Ali, whom the Shias refer to as Imams. And so long as they had living Imams, they believed that those living Imams should be the heads of the Muslim community, not the caliphs who were ruling in Damascus and Baghdad for many years. Now, in long duration of history, the Shiites lost. In other words, they were never able to mount their Imams, the descendants of Ali, as leaders of the Muslim community. But by and large, the way these two communities separated, brings to mind for a Christian maybe the memory of the division between the Eastern Church and the Western Church. Something that happened long time ago over something that might appear trivial to us today. But once the two sides parted ways, then they developed a very different relationship to the Scripture. They read it differently, they interpreted it differently, they saw theology differently, and then they have very different historical experiences.
The history as it emerges, particularly in these early years, does involve even then a Shia minority and a Sunni majority, and there was actual conflict between these two communities over the proper succession. And even in those times, the Shia were more victimized than anything else in terms of the consequence they paid for not believing the mainstream way of succession.
Absolutely. I mean, Shia history, early Shia history is very much like early Christian history. It's all suffering and persecution and life under the ground and fear and anxiety. The Shias early in their history did not experience what the majority Sunni did, which is success. Islam was born as a religion very successfully. It conquered Arabia quickly. It then conquered North Africa. It conquered southern Spain. It conquered Iran. It pushed the Byzantines out of the Levant area. It's a history of power and glory, early Islam, but not for the Shia minority. Their history is persecution. The most important act that gives birth to Shiism is when Ali's second son, by the name of Hussein, along with 70 members of his family, is surrounded by a 30,000-man Syrian army sent by the Caliph, demanding that he pay allegiance to the Caliph. And when he refuses, they force him into battle, and he's massacred. All of them are massacred. And for the Shiites, the death of Hussein, who's buried in the city of Karbala in Iraq today, is something like the crucifixion of Christ. So a innocent representative of divine truth is lynched by worldly power, but then wins a much higher moral victory from which a whole religion is born. So the Shiites were born with that sense of persecution, having moral victory but not worldly power along with it. Things change in the medieval period when Iran becomes Shia, and then you for the first time have the birth of a major Shia empire. And then the battles with the Sunnis are not battles of underground religious dissidents against a much larger authority, but is much more like the Protestant Catholic battles of the medieval period. Namely, you have a Catholic prince and a Protestant prince, and they fight wars over territory. So you had the Sunni Ottoman Empire, which was rooted in Turkey and controlled Arab lands, and he was fighting with the Shia Empire in Iran over territory and over who would emerge as the more powerful force in the region. So the tenor of the battle changed, but ultimately the Shiites in terms of numbers remained the minority, and also within the configuration of the Middle East, outside of Iran, they were left out of power. So the modern states that we had in the Arab world, the Egypts, the Syrias, the Jordans, in some ways are the inheritors of the Ottoman Empire. And in Ottoman Empire, the Sunnis ruled. They were majority then. And whatever Shiites were among them, in Lebanon, in Iraq, they were minorities. So the modern Arab state carried that mantle of domination of Sunnis over Shias.